Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're doing a pretty exciting video for you guys today. Bunch of broadhead testing, specifically fixed blades, and we got one special one in here to test out. One tried and true broadhead, and just another one that I have heard good stuff about, haven't shot anything with, but it should be a fun video. So stay tuned and let's jump right in. So the first broadhead I'm going to be talking about is the Grim Reaper Pro Micro Hades 3 blade. And all these broadheads are 125 grains. And obviously this broadhead has been around for a good bit of time. It's proven, it is tough, and it's just a great broadhead. This thing flies really good, and there's a lot of people who shoot this broadhead. One that comes to mind who kind of made it famous is Dan Staton from Elk Shape. He kind of just brought this broadhead to the light, and it is an amazing broadhead. Super affordable, super tough, and just great. One thing I do like about this broadhead that's very awesome is this point here. It is absolutely indestructible, I feel, and it is very sharp. That's what I like about it. It's actually sharpened, whereas most broadheads with a chisel point are, you know, they have a point, but they're not actually sharpened. This thing's actually very sharp. One dislike I do have about this broadhead, it's not a huge deal, but it is something to think about just when, like, fine details. So say, like, in a hunt, you have to take your broadheads off and you're shooting your field points, making sure you're all dialed in, and this little ring here, as you're like changing stuff in and out, you lose this little ring here. Now it's not a huge deal, and they do stay on for the most part sometimes, but it can fall off, and then you're left with like having to, I don't know how this would be shooting just up against here without that ring. This retainer ring kind of just keeps those blades securely locked into the broadhead. So that is one thing that is a bummer with that retainer ring. That is what allows you to be able to replace blades on here. Now I do think that this broadhead, the ferrule will definitely stand up to some good impact, so you could replace the blades on here. If you hit something very hard, this ferrule might get bent, but that's what you get with any like replaceable blade broadhead. You don't get that one-piece construction durability. But I really haven't seen this broadhead fail very often. In general, it's been very tough. Out of the box, the Grim Reapers are sharp, like super sharp, so that is a plus. But yeah, just an overall pretty great broadhead. The next broadhead I want to be going over, and you guys have seen this on the channel before, is this VPA 3-blade 125 grain. This is the non-vented series, and also the 1 1/8 cutting diameter series. So one thing I really liked about this broadhead when I was searching for it is it is machined out of one solid piece of steel, which that's nice. I believe these things are hardened to 52 or 55 Rockwell hardness, so it's a very hard broadhead and should stand up to a lot of impact. Now one thing about this thing is, out of the package, they're not sharp. You got to realize that when you buy it, they're not sharp. So spend a little time with this, just running it over the sharpening stone, and it developed an edge very quickly, and it is very sharp. It's actually held this edge for a while. This is the broadhead that I use for practice and making sure they fly good, and going through foam, it really doesn't dull it that much. So it does stay sharp, but you do have to get them sharp. The point on here, obviously it's going to be sharp because you're sharpened all the way up there. That nice 3-blade solid design, super tough. It does actually have really good cutting diameter, I feel. And so that's one good thing about it. One thing I did have a little bit of problems with this, but the company does address it, is they do develop a little bit of like rust if you're hunting in a damp area. Where I'm hunting, pretty humid, it does get this like surface layer of rust on the part that's not coated, and that is not a huge deal. All I do is take a little bit of like gun cleaning oil or whatever, rub it on here, wipe it off with a paper towel, and it seems to do fine. So that's not a huge problem. But I mean, with any good steel, you're pretty much going to have that just because of the quality it is. And so yeah, very good broadhead. I would recommend it. Flies actually super true. I had no problems tuning this thing in. Our third broadhead on this review is the Tooth of the Arrow, 1 3/16 inch cutting diameter. Obviously it's a 4-blade. That's all Tooth of the Arrow broadheads. This is also the vented series, 125 grain again. This broadhead, Tooth of the Arrow, actually reached out to us and sent this to us for us to do some testing on. So one thing out of the box I really like about this broadhead, it is very sharp, and it has a 45-degree blade angle, which a lot of these other broadheads actually don't have. So I really like that. This is machined out of one solid piece of steel. It is hardened to 45 Rockwell hardness, so good Rockwell hardness. And they said on their website that they went with that hardness to provide like edge retention as well as durability, which I kind of like how they stated that. This broadhead is the only 4-blade of the group. Now this definitely has the stoutest like ferrule, you could say. It's almost just like a field point with like blades on it, so it should be super accurate, especially with this vented series. I have not had any experience with these broadheads yet. I have not shot them. We're going to do a flight test here soon. I don't think I'm going to have any accuracy problems. Not a lot of planing surface area, but just a good solid looking broadhead. And as I said before, one piece of solid steel they're machined out of, just like the VPA. These are both machined out of solid piece of steel. And as you can see, this Tooth of the Arrow broadhead is quite a bit shorter than the VPA, but is much stouter in the middle here. Whereas the VPA it's pretty thin, but it's still very durable. Both of these broadheads are going to be super durable. I really don't have a preference on a 3-blade versus a 4-blade. I am not really sure what the difference would be. They both put pretty similar holes through animals, and I don't think you're gonna like see a giant difference in flight either. That's just my opinion. We'll have to test that out. But yeah, let's get to shooting these broadheads and see how they fly. As you guys can probably tell, all those broadheads flew good. At 40 yards, I think we're gonna step it back to probably about 60, really test them. It's a little windy today, so that might affect it. But really the key, honestly, to getting your broadheads flying straight is arrow tuning, bow tuning. So, I don't know. if all your tuning and stuff's out of whack, nothing's gonna fly straight. But I have these things tuned, they're good to go. They hit where my field points hit. So I think we're just gonna step it out to 60, really test these broadheads flight. Yeah, I can't really say I really found any differences between any of these three at 40 yards flying. No drop or anything, which isn't expected. We'll step it back to 60, see what happens. Alright, we got the Grim Reaper 125 grain 3-blade, 60 yards. VPA 125 grain. Tooth of the Arrow 125 grain. As you guys can probably tell, the accuracy test at 60 yards was pretty close. Now, I do have probably a good 10-12 mile an hour wind coming through. As you guys can see, those arrows are drifting towards that left side of the target. Not a whole lot you can do about that. Fixed blades at 60 yards with a little bit of wind are pretty difficult to shoot, but I still feel like it was a good representation of actually how accurate these broadheads are, because we didn't see very much dropping. We didn't see a ton of like wind drag, anything like that. We saw consistency, which was the main thing. All, I really can't say one of these broadheads stood out more than the other. I mean, I had all of them hit the center or very close at one time or another. So really, can I say one of those broadheads is more accurate than the other? No, I really think it's all about tuning your bow, tuning your arrow, knock tuning, making sure everything like that is good to go.